Record to the cloud. Let me know when you see the record button going.
Yes, I saw it. No, it's being recorded.
Alrighty. Thank you, Ali, for being here today. We both wanted to learn a little bit more about analytics for marketing decisions. That's Marketing 564. So I guess, could you just give a quick overview of this class, and then how does this class perhaps build on or relate to other classes?
Okay. I assume most people, all of you guys must have taken the core marketing course. And the way that course is structured, I would say there's this 3C, or depends on who's teaching it, is either 3Cs or another C as well. And 4Ps. And those 4Ps are the tactics that the firm has to improve demand, make profits and stuff like that. And the 4Ps are structured around, product, prices, placements, and promotions. What we are going to do in this course is that each module of the course is sort of revolving around one of these topics. We're going to use real world data. This is data from actual firms out there. And we're going to see how demand reacts to these sort of tactics. How can you, improve your prices to improve your profits? How can you measure the effect of promotions and the stuff like that? So mostly it revolves around demand. And how does demand react to these 4Ps? That would be a quick summary of the course. But I can go a little bit deeper than that if you want to. I
think we'll get to it. That is a fantastic overview of the sort of concepts that will be taught over the course of the quarter. I'm curious about how actually the course is structured to make sure students are getting those takeaways. Are there cases, homework assignments, group work, final projects, exams, all of the above?
Okay, so the course won't have any cases. It, however, has these projects or mini projects after each module. So in each mini project, you're going to apply the techniques that you learn in the course to a real world problem. For instance, with start fit regression analysis, this is going to be a little bit repetitive early on. So for those of you that take the course, maybe the first session or the second session is a little bit of an overview. We're going to look at dating markets, actually. So we're going to look at how people react in their dating markets. Why is it important for the platform to learn how people factor in these preferences? Then we go to another example, very, very different. It's about casinos. So pricing for casinos. Now you may say, well, how do casinos price? Well, if you think about it, you go to a casino, there's a price you pay to gamble. There's another factor or another parameter that casino controls, namely for slot machines that you go, you put money and you bet. So there's a parameter called the hold rate. These are what I call implicit prices. It's actually about my research as well. This is a price that the consumer actually does not observe. This is the percentage that the machine can retain. It's actually tunable. Now you may say, the consumer does not observe it. How do they react to it? It's actually a good question. Do they react to it? To what extent do they react to it? If a casino is a little bit sneaky, they increase the hold rate, they're going to make more money, but does this mean that there's going to be a reaction from demand? If you want to think about implicit prices in a broader sense, think about advertising. You look at ad-supported Hulu or ad-supported Spotify or ad-supported Pandora. This is about my thesis as well. It's like you have these implicit prices you're paying with your time or your attention. Now, if the firm starts increasing these prices, do you actually figure out? It's not like a posted price. It's not like $4.99 is now $5.99. So we're going to do some demand estimation with these implicit prices, and then we're going to see, how do people react? What are some confounds we should be careful about? And then we move to promotions and prices in supermarkets. You go to a supermarket, there is, geographic dispersion, how prices work, how they change. Again, another sort of regression analysis, we try to optimize prices. We have other modules, again, we can move to, online world. We have a data from an online platform. And then, okay, somebody is looking for me. So we have an online platform, and then, you look at promotions again. So basically, each module consists of, what's the problem? We discuss it in class. There's going to be an in-class assignment. Now, my assumption is that hopefully we are going to go back to in person. And the way it works is that you'll have your laptops and then you're working on the code in part of the class. And then the TA and me will go around, we try to troubleshoot, and you will get the concept in class. And then you will go do an extended version of what we did in class at home, solve a problem, and submit it as your homework. So this is how it's structured. We teach in class the concept, go over them. Then there's some R code, there's some R markdown files. You try to complete them, you try to run them, understand them. In the class, I'll give you time. We'll go over it. Even if it's online, we managed to pull it off last year. It's a little bit more difficult, but we managed to have, these one-on-one sessions, like this private channels on Zoom, the TA would go around, and we managed to do it. It's a little bit more difficult, but hopefully this year it's going to be more smooth.
Fair.
So
We are in person right now, by the way.
I understand that, but we don't know what's going to happen till winter. But I'm hoping that based on what the university has told us, the plan is to be in person.
Got it. All right.
Living 2 years in a pandemic, everything can happen. So,
Of course. Alicia, yeah, I think you were in something.
yes, yeah, I had a related question. So you mentioned regression analysis, you mentioned R. Can you speak to a little bit more of the tools or the languages that are taught in this course?
okay, the course will be mainly focused on R. Okay, now having said that, the things you learn, for instance, you will learn principal component analysis, PCA, right? And the way you will use it is that you'll try to understand who you're competing against. This will be, clear in a little while. Imagine you are an auto producer. That's actually the example we have in class, and you're producing the Camry. It's not really clear whether you're competing against the Civic or the Accord, or how far there are in terms of perceptions of the customers. So we try to get questions from the customers and create perceptual maps, which is how far is Camry from Accord? How far is it from Civic? How far is it from a Volkswagen Jetta? Okay, so these techniques, there are packages for them in any other language, like Python, stuff like that. But the course is going to be focused on R. So that's going to be the main language that we're going to use.
Awesome. Thank you. And you've given a lot of really great real life examples, from the grocery store example to the casino to the car shopping and prices. I'm wondering, are there particular job functions or roles that you think would require the skills taught in this class? Like, who would benefit most from taking this?
A great question. So I would say our focus is mostly on what could go wrong if you don't do the analysis right. Okay, so I would say this is mostly for people who would be interested in management positions and data science teams. They want to manage a team, or they want to even do data analytics and measure the effects of promotions, do pricing, get involved in these teams. You can ask from people who have taken the course before. This course is also a similar course is also offered in the MSBA program. Many of those folks end up in jobs that try to optimize prices, promotions, or data science teams that try to measure the impact of firm interventions. That could be changing the design. How does demand react to the product? How does demand react to how we fulfill the service? Basically, generally, the way I look at marketing is that we're trying to understand demand. And we're trying to understand heterogeneity in demand, like how do different people react to different incentives. And also, we try to understand it from different perspectives: service fulfillment, prices, the product itself, and promotions, advertising. So I would say there are many opportunities. This could go, you're in Seattle, this could go from a firm like Starbucks, right, to a firm like Amazon, to a firm like Facebook, right? So I would say all of these companies have teams that are working on related sort of advertising or pricing problems.
Thank you. One other one. So just in terms of this being a winter quarter class, so your class falls in between customer analytics, which is in the fall, and then digital marketing analytics in the spring. So if someone is deciding or trying to learn more about each of these courses, how would you contrast your course from the others?
So customer analytics gives you a broader view of what's going on. My understanding is that who is offering customer analytics this year? Is it Oliver Roots or is it Simha?
It's Emma.
Okay, it's Simha. Okay, so my understanding is that that's going to be a broader view. There's not going to be much involvement, and let's code this up. Let's do this thing. Our course, we're going to focus more on the 4 Ps and focus more on the pricing problems, on really what's the nitty gritty of doing these estimations, right? At some points you'll say, okay, just basically you want to run a regression or you want to run a machine learning algorithm. We'll have some machine learning algorithms in the end, towards the end of the class, but you want to know what could go wrong. What are the things that you should be careful when you're actually implementing these in a firm? Customer analytics is really giving you an overview of what the problems are, right? So you want to say, here's a space, and here is a smaller part of problems in my course that we're trying to solve it. Digital marketing is going to focus on another set of problems, but I would say customer analytics, sets the stage, and the 2 other courses that are followed after are going to tackle the problems one by one.
Awesome. Thank you for that. I mean, to build off that question a little bit, like those other 2 classes aren't necessarily a prerequisite for this course, but are there certain skills that you think would be particularly helpful for students coming into this? And like, what would you say it takes for a student to be particularly successful?
Okay, so that's a great question that relates to churn in my class and attrition in the class. Because it's not a prerequisite, it means that people come with different levels of skill. So the first 1 or 2 sessions of my class is trying to make sure everybody is at the same level. Now, just a heads up, you come to the class and you know everything in the first session. It doesn't mean that you know everything in the next 9 sessions, right? So I have to do that precisely because of what you just said. So that's why we have that regression analysis exercise in the first class. And some people say, oh, I know all of these things because I took customer analytics. I'm like, there are some people who have not taken it, right? So to bring everybody to the same level, I have already accounted for the fact that people come with heterogeneous backgrounds. Again, we're in marketing, we have to satisfy people with heterogeneous, demand or heterogeneous background. So I already thought about that. That's the cost that I had to pay. The first session really tries to do a review of what happened before. What are some tools that I'm going to need from your stats course and from your customer analytics course? And then we're going to do that through an exercising class, again, an R coding exercising class. And then there's going to be some discussion, a small homework after. I try to call these small homeworks rather than mini projects. That just has too much weight. So there's going to be a small homework, and hopefully everybody will be at the same level. So there's people should not worry about the fact that they come in with different levels. We try to accommodate that, and you're going to work in groups. There's some learning in the group environment as well, right? So hopefully everybody will catch up, and then this is going to be a smooth experience for everybody.
Sorry, for some reason I thought I saw something on the screen. Yeah, thank you for that, like super honest, transparent answer. I think, yeah, like you said, a lot of people come in with different levels of experience, and then that just means learning curves are a little bit different. I guess an extension of that, what is something that students might find particularly challenging about this course? Like you touched on a little earlier, but I was wondering if you could go into a little more detail.
Well, for some students, I would say, even after taking a couple of classes, it's just we'll have much more exposure to coding, to R code, and there will still be students who struggle a little bit with debugging the code, get things running. The way I did it last year, and I'm hoping I'll do it again this year, is that I try to run things the way they ran in, say, industry. So let's think about we are a big group and we're trying to achieve this thing, which is this course. So my course will have a Slack channel. So I'll use a Slack. Hopefully it's not, the free Slack is still there till winter. So what's going to happen is that we're going to have troubleshooting, channels. And if you have had used, Slack, you know how it works. The UI has, different sections. So we'll have, in-class troubleshooting. We have, homework questions. And then you're going to work with your classmates in teams or as a group mate to actually troubleshoot. And then this is going to be hopefully useful for your experience even in industry, because let's say you assume a role in a firm and then, something doesn't work. That's really the way to fix it, right? You have to really post these questions and try to get answers to them. So my approach is that rather than just feeding you the answer, I want you guys to find the answer yourself, because, you leave this course, you know how to do one thing, and then it's slightly different in the industry. It's not exactly structured the way I have structured it. And I want you guys to be able to, define the problem again, solve it with the tools you learned. But I would say, coming back to your question of what's the biggest challenge, for most folks, it's just getting R up and running and just having because some of the other courses before, they don't really get you involved with R. They have packages that sit on R or create an UI for R. You don't have to actually do coding. This course, you'll have to do a little bit of coding, and then that becomes a little bit challenging for people. Some of the concepts are a little bit deeper. The way we tackle this is that I try to repeat it, but not in the same context. So we move from, say, look, here's one pricing problem. This is how this issue manifests in terms of biasing your estimates. Here's another problem, promotions. This is how the very same issue again can cause a problem. So hopefully with, practice, repetition, you'll get the core concepts and can apply it to real world problems.
Thank you. One question that I had related to what we were talking about a little bit earlier that I meant to ask then is, in terms of the analytics, it sounds like maybe it's a little bit of both of this, but was curious if the analytics that you're going to be teaching is more in the realm of causal inference, so using experiment data, or predictive analytics using observational and real world data, or
very good question. We're going to have lots of observational data, actually. I wouldn't say those are non-causal, but we should be very, very careful when we're doing a causal interpretation on observational data, as you pointed out. My research, actually, I have both. I have experimental data and observational data as well. Sometimes we can't afford to have experimental data, right? It's just hard to run an experiment in certain scenarios. But yes, I think you touched on a very, very important topic, which is, I would say almost all the modules that I have is going to be about some form of causal inference. We want to get at the causal effect of some instrument, something that the firm controls on demand, right? We also may do some counterfactual sort of analysis, which is what would have happened if the firm had done this rather than this other thing, right? Which is really the crux of analytics, because we just don't want to do business as usual. We're hoping that we can change the strategy towards something better, right? So there's going to be some counterfactual analysis. Again, that sits on causal inference, right? I'm adding a module to the course, which I'm not sure if time permits. There's going to be additional topics. So there's going to be a new module in the course. I'm not sure whether we'll have time for that or not. But that would again revolve around even more techniques for doing causal inference. So things like if you have two different groups, you want to get at the causal effect of, let me give you an example. Imagine you want to measure the causal effect of going to Foster on your wages. It's an important topic, you pay a lot, and then you want to see whether it's worth it or not. But, a naive comparison is to take people who went to Foster and people who didn't go to Foster and say, look, the wage of these folks is much higher than the wage of these folks, controlling for age and everything. But if you think about it, people who went to Foster are very different from people who didn't go to Foster, right? So, there are presumably, interviews, tests, prerequisites to get into the program. So you can't just do a raw comparison, right? So there are different approaches. One approach would be, it's called regression discontinuity. If you can access to the material that the MBA office has, and they did some sorting on the candidates, and at some point there was a cutoff, right? You can compare the people right above the cutoff and right below the cutoff, right? That's one way to get a little bit around the fact that people were different. These two folks were very similar. It's just that some folks got really lucky even above the cutoff. Some people were below. This is called regression discontinuity. Another approach is that, well, I'm going to do some matching, right? I'm going to match up these people based on their characteristics, their GPAs, their GMAT, all of these scores that they had. And I will create a similar mix of people who didn't go to Foster, compare them with each other. That happens a lot in industry as well. A person who gets a promotion is very, like, these promotions are not done randomly, right? They're targeted. It's just you get a promotion and Christine gets another promotion. No, it's just comparing these things directly is going to be misleading. So a lot of the modules in the course are going to talk about confounds. What are some confounds that we can control for? What are some confounds that we should be careful about? And towards the end, I'm hoping I can add another module where we can talk about matching and more modern causal inference, techniques. Still not sure whether time will permit that, but we'll see.
Sounds like a lot of exciting stuff just built in and stuffed into this course. I think we have time for one more question. I guess, Alicia, do you want to take this one? And then we can have some closing comments.
Yes, sure. I was also going to say, I know, so customer analytics actually has touched on matching. High level, I think right now, I'm not sure if we'll come back to it at all, but that has come up. But the last question that I had, so you mentioned that your course would be good for people who might want to go into data science or management and kind of working with pricing and a lot of these sort of strategic decisions. Do you think that, or how would you describe the value that your course would give to someone who maybe isn't wanting to go directly into those areas? So I know a lot of our students might be interested in consulting or in tech product management or finance roles.
Well, very good question. I would say many of the concepts that are in this course would apply to some of those roles, right? Maybe not directly, but at least even if you go to a management consulting role, you are sometimes, given data that is heavily aggregated or data that is not, there's not a clean experiment. Some of the intuitions you build in these courses, and I'm not saying just my course, many of these other analytics courses are just gonna hint you, like just give a hint to you what the problem could be, what could go wrong that the firm made this decision, and what are some evidence that I could look for to then see whether that problem or that the issue was at the center of this decision making. I wouldn't say directly you would open R and it's just not like an action movie and just you do something. It's just that intuition, the practice that you get from seeing the same problem over and over again. Maybe you see some facet of it in finance, another facet in marketing, another facet in digital marketing, one in customer analytics, then it sort of, starts to build in some intuition that, well, here is how a person without experience would think about this data, but here are all these other routes that could lead to this misleading interpretation, and I can perhaps, look for signs of problems or at least try to address them. But I wouldn't say directly, well, you will definitely use R. No, you could assume, you could get a role and you could be using Python, but the difference in using PCA in Python and R is really minimal. These days, these languages are very, very easy to pick up. It's not about the language anymore. It's about knowing the right tool to be applied to the problem. So I would say, no, there's no one-to-one mapping within this course and say a management consulting role, but does it help? Yes, for sure it does. Do other courses also help? Yes, they do. And I feel like, as I said, if you're going to management consulting, and as I said, the firms that are using marketing and are the big players these days are numerous. Just think about it in the Seattle area. Facebook and Google, most of their revenue comes from advertising. Amazon, a big chunk of its revenue is coming from demand fulfillment. Starbucks, same. It's a service demand fulfillment arm, and all of these folks have problems that directly relate to the modules in the course and other marketing courses that you would take during the program.
This sounds extremely relevant, and something like that. There's probably something for everyone for this in this course. I wanted to make sure we're ending more or less on time. So
Sure.
I guess to give your final, selling point or marketing pitch for analytics for marketing decisions, like what would you want students to know about your course that we haven't necessarily talked about yet over the last few minutes?
Okay. That's I have not prepared my elevator pitch for the course, but
Whatever
I
comes
would
up.
say just think about one day of your life, right? And see how many times are you interacting with things that somehow relate to marketing. You take out your phone, you open an app, there are banner ads, right? These banner ads are targeted. They're paid for through an auction. Actually, we'll have a homework on this, banner ads for games. And you want to do shopping, there are many prices there. Amazon is pricing thousands and I think even millions right now of products that they're going to sell. And you won't have a person doing that. It's just completely automated. So there needs to be an algorithm that understands demand and how people react to it. Try to book a flight. Again, same story. There needs to be a demand estimation model working in the background to understand that. You go home after work, you take out your phone, and maybe you have a dating app. The dating app has to account for the fact that it's making money for the firm. Now, next time you're swiping, just think about it. What are the incentives of the firm? How is it making money? It's making money through two channels, right? It's one of them is advertising, another one is subscription fees. So again, put it into perspective. It has to calculate your lifetime value, right? So even if the algorithm right now knows the best match for you, maybe it's not worthwhile to just show it to you because they want you to be around to see those ads and get the subscription fees, right? So just think about this lifetime value of the customer, prices, promotions, products a little bit more seriously, and you would see that they're around us all the time. And then you open your Netflix or whatever, Hulu or Amazon Prime, there are these recommendation systems, again, trying to understand your demand, this time demand for media, right? Or demand for what you want to consume. So I would say if you're interested in knowing how to do these things or knowing a little bit more about how to do these things, understanding heterogeneity, doing demand estimation, seeing how, these online platforms work in terms of serving ads, stuff like that. Knowing a little bit more about lifetime value, I think this course is for you. But if you're not, it's fine. People have heterogeneous tastes. We know that in marketing, so that's all.
That was a fantastic pitch. Thank you. It sounds extremely applicable. I'm going to stop the recording in a second, but I just wanted to again say thank you. I think this will be extremely helpful for everyone who as they're trying to decide what classes they want to bid on, both first and second years. So thank you.
Great.